Hello and welcome back to the X-Files Revisited. We are on to Season 4, Episode 16, Unrequited. Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about the legacy of this episode?
Film. It's been a while. It's so it's a standalone episode. It's a kind of villain of the week episode.
Hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's not up there with like the likes of Squeeze, those kind of things. Donny Faster. I know you weren't a big fan of the Donny Faster one, but amongst X-Files fans, I wouldn't imagine this kind of has the same kind of legacy as that. But yeah, it's what you would call your standard episode, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's your standard X-Files episode. So
Right. And shall we do our guessing game?
let's do it. 217 episodes. Where do you think this sits?
I think I will go 177.
Oh, that was close. It's 174.
Wow. Ooh. Okay.
Yep.
It's not too bad. I count that as a win.
Okay.
Shall we dive into it then, Brian?
Yeah, let's get into it. So we open up on a Vietnam memorial, which could very well be the same Vietnam memorial we saw in Never Again. We're tracking a killer, so it's like a speech going on. It's like a memorial event for people who fought in Vietnam, and there's a huge crowd there, a lot of American flags flying, and then you've got Mulder and Scully in the crowd, and they're clearly searching for someone, and then that someone kind of appears and then disappears, and it's like he's going to assassinate someone, but every time they get a bead on this guy, he disappears, and then when it looks like he's about to reach his target, we cut to the opening credits.
Yes. Like I said, it's like a high octane opening. Plenty of extras. We've got Mulder and Scully doing what seems like almost normal FBI work for a change. Trying to hunt someone down, and then we have the disappearing man. It was it didn't fill me with super confidence for the episode. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad opening. I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, he can go invisible. Can he not mutate into like some weird tentacled man or something, or just like invisible? Invisible almost seems mundane for the X-Files.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, and the thing is, we've already had like kind of an invisible man with the season 3 episode, The Walk, but that was the guy who was leaving his body, and that made for kind of like a cool effect and stuff. But it's like, yeah, when we've already kind of been there, the setup isn't all that intriguing, and I think the setting as well. It's like, okay, Vietnam vets. A little bit of Sleepless in there as well, the season 2 episode with Tony Todd, in which you've got a Vietnam vet coming back to wreak revenge. So it does have like a flavour already right in the opening of a couple of episodes we've already seen before. But there's enough there to make me think, all right, yeah, okay, let's see where this goes. But, right, so after the opening credits, we get a general landing at Fort Evanstown, and when he gets inside his limo, he finds a playing card, the one that you can see behind us there on that still that I've taken.
Yep.
And yeah, it's the killer. So the killer that we saw in the opening credits, he's there in the limo, and yeah, could be him. Clearly, this guy's getting offed.
Yes, 100%. And it's like a nice little setup. I like the way it's directed and just plays out. I like the way the killer is so deranged that he almost toys with the victims. Just appearing there, giving them a brief moment of knowing what's about to happen before pulling the trigger. And then we get the poor scene
Yeah.
of the driver suddenly opening the door and seeing the ramifications of what has happened. And knowing that he's in the firing line next, really.
Yeah. It's like there's no one that is going to be under suspicion beyond him. So yeah, poor sod. But there you go. So Private Burkholder, driving the limo, is charged with murder. They need to find the accomplice. So they believe there's an accomplice. But Mulder is like, what if he was telling the truth? Because Burkholder has ties to the right hand. And Mulder and Scully request to serve the warrant for their leader. So yeah, it's like kind of a fair bit of information in like a couple of linked scenes there, but yeah, it just the fact that this guy has links to this terrorist kind of organization really doesn't help his case. But it also begs the question: how did he get a job working for a general, a top tier general of the
Transporting a high
military?
valued target. Yeah, just like it's one of those little like we'll go with it. Like it's just one of those things. We just need
It's
to
like a
shrug
member
our
of the
shoulders
Ku
and go,
Klux
okay.
Klan. Member of the Ku Klux Klan being the limo driver for the Black Panthers, leading kind of.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so they go to see this guy called Markham, who's the leader of the right hand, who rather playfully says, yeah, come on in, gates open. So they come in, and then two attack dogs just come out and like try and nail them. So Markham makes his way out and is not very cooperative, to say the least. And then when he sees the playing card, he says that more people are going to die. Markham tells them they are looking for a man named Tiger, who he liberated from a Vietnam POW camp.
Yeah. Like this is one of those guys that could do some real damage. I kind of like him because, like you say, like that playful moment at the start, come on in, come on to my property. It's all fine. And then just kind of, even the way he like kind of stands up for himself against Mulder and Scully, and until he kind of realizes that there's a small army there as well, at which point, the game's up. But I kind of like this character, although he's reprehensible. It was a fun addition to the story so far.
Yeah, definitely. So we obviously we're now getting a bit of history as well with regards to who this Tiger is, who this killer is. So he's starting to seem like less of a just out and out bad guy, but rather someone you can sympathize with. So like when you think about, so what is it? Like when was Vietnam War? Like mid 70s, was it?
Late 60s.
Late 60s.
Yeah, I think it was late
okay.
60s.
So, and this is like 94, 95. So this guy has been a POW, basically a prisoner of war, for about 20 years. Like you could understand why this guy's a little bit pissed. Why he's got some some scores to settle. Yeah. Tiga visits a widow at the war memorial to tell her that her husband is still alive and is a POW. He gives her the dog tags to prove it before disappearing. which really upsets her, obviously.
Yeah, and this is probably the most cruelest sequence in this episode, because this guy is devastating this woman's life.
Mm-hmm.
She has buried her husband, she's moved on, created a whole new family, and he has just ripped that from right under her feet. And I think it's supposed to like give us another character and a next stepping stone for the story, but my goodness, that character is just completely destroyed and then discarded.
Yeah. Mulder and Scully talk to Skinner. Scully thinks it's all a plot by Markham to distract them from what's really going on. But Mulder obviously believes it to be true.
Yeah.
Your obligatory scene in which Scully is the voice of reason and Mulder's like, no, it's definitely the supernatural.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, they speak to the widow, who IDs Teager from the photo. Widow gets worked up and her eye starts bleeding. Mulder asks Scully to give her an exam and thinks it's linked to Teager's disappearing act.
Yeah.
So literally the only reason for having that scene in which he devastates her entire life. Like I still I understand that scene happening as well, just purely from an emotional standpoint. Like, I get where this guy's at. We also have to take into account that if he was a prisoner of war for 20 years, going through goodness knows what, I would imagine this guy's ability to be sociable has completely gone out the window. And perhaps in his mind, he's doing a humane thing by telling this guy's wife that he's still alive. But yeah, without any kind of social skills whatsoever.
And this, so we're on to possibly my favourite moment in this episode.
So this is where Mulder goes to see the remains of Teager. The expert who shows them to him says that even at the time that he was pronounced dead, the report said the results were inconclusive. Mulder asks him to find out who signed off on Teager's death. So what is it precisely that...
It's the remains, Brian. It's the bringing out the remains of this character, which involves 3 teeth. 3 teeth, and you can be legally pronounced dead. That was I was like, the guy carries them in a petri dish. I was like, yep, we've got 2 molars and a bicuspid. So quite clearly him.
But definitely Teager. Definitely Teager.
Yeah, definitely Teager, but we're just not quite sure what killed him. Why not? How can you not figure that out? You've got. It was so ludicrous. I loved it. Like, I absolutely loved it. I was killing myself laughing watching this.
Yeah. Who signed off on this?
Yeah.
So Mulder calls the general. He's being driven to the Pentagon, and Mulder warns him to be extremely cautious, tells him he's on his way to him. And the general makes his way to his office, where Teager follows right behind him in broad daylight in front of everyone, even going past security, and no one seems to be able to see him. Scully calls Mulder to see the widow, to say the widow has a floating blind spot, usually caused by one of a list of diseases she doesn't have. General Stefan calls Mulder to tell him he found a card on his desk. Then Teager shoots him.
Yeah, a lot going on. I like the metal detector sequence when he just walks through. There's just something kind of fun about that, because I think us as the viewer, we're in on it. We know what's going to happen. He just walks through, and it sets it off. But what I don't understand is how he manages to get into that office before him and set up the card. Does he? Because he goes through after him. Does he run ahead of him? Does he?
I mean, it's
because we see him walking in the room.
Yeah, I would imagine he went in there before, laid the card down, then went down to wait for him to come in, followed him back up so he could kill him in his office.
They say later on that his secretary had been in there, and that wasn't there, just like a little prior.
Right. Well, then
anyway,
he must have
getting stuck up in a point that means nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah, I mean, he could have.
It's one of those Graham's
just
like, non sequiturs where I just bring up a random point and just derail the episode because of this stupid.
Yeah, it's not like the whole. It's not like the whole episode falls apart as a result of it. He literally just slapped it down right then, and boom, problem solved. But yeah. So Mulder arrives, and this was the bit that cracked me up when he says, "Call an ambulance." Dude's got a gunshot wound to the head. It's like, what's the rush? It's like we're not going to save him. So he almost sees Teague. And the other thing as well is like, does it really take Mulder to get there to say call an ambulance? Like, would these guys not have done that already? Like these military guys are so lacking in intelligence that they would just stand around waiting for Mulder to get there before they thought, oh yeah, the ambulance, yeah, better call one of them. Thanks for letting us know. So, but
I would like to have seen a scene of the two guys. I'd like to have seen the two guys like standing there after the fact going, shit, what the hell are we going to say happened? We need to figure this out, and then Mulder just bursting through.
Yeah. So,
but I do love how when anybody walks into a room or a murder or anything, they always open a door wide and then walk out the way. Like when they just silly.
So, but Mulder almost sees Teague in his peripheral vision. And yeah, cool. Mulder and Scully chat about what may or may not be going on when Skinner arrives to show them security footage. Mulder tells him that he thinks Teague can manipulate people's vision, hiding in a blind spot, something he learned from his captors. Says the only way to find Teague is to get to his next victim before he does. Yeah. So obviously, like during Vietnam War, this was like a high-tech country who had all the modern weapons at their disposal, going up against a bunch of farmers and people who lived in tunnels, and they lost. And it's like this kind of says, well, there must have been something. We couldn't have just been beat by a bunch of family. They must have had something up their sleeve. And the X-Files gives us the answer. They had superpowers. They were able to hide in blind spots. Yes. So that's the reason America got beat. But there you go. General Benjamin Block goes to see Markham to ask him what Teague wants. Gets physical with him, pushes him up against the wall, gets all up in his face. It's just, it seems like a pretty ineffectual general, to be perfectly honest. And now that I think of it, this guy does remind me of the general guy who was in The Walk. If you remember the one who was kind of heading up the prison, the hospital prison.
Yeah.
He kind of
warden type of guy.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a flavor about him that's kind of similar. But I don't feel threatened by this guy, to be honest. So there is a parade for the war memorial, and Tiga is kind of watching as it's all being set up. He's kind of looking like the second gunman on the grassy knoll at this point. And then Mulder sees Covarrubias. So I gotta say, in comparison to the likes of Deep Throat and X, Covarrubias seems to get brought out for a lot of the kind of more mundane kind of episodes. It's like they're not saving her for the really meaty stuff. They just, they brought her out for Teleco.
Yeah. It gets to the point where I've I'd forgot all about her. And I think it might just be let's bring her back out just so people remember. I mean, in my notes, I've got X squared because I couldn't remember who it was, her name.
Yeah. So, and thing is, she's not an unattractive woman. She isn't someone who should be hard to remember. So it's like, yeah. So he tells her what he knows, and she suggests the government wants these men dead to cover up any embarrassment for leaving them behind as POWs. Mulder says he needs to know who the third man is going to be. And at this point, I don't think it's a shock to anyone who that third man is going to be. So we go straight to the parade, and Skinner and Scully stop General Block, who's the third man, and they tell him his life is in danger. Then Scully sees Tiga, who vanishes after she pulls her gun and scares the crap out of everyone.
Like a crazy person.
So we go to a bit more memorial prep, and Mulder tells Scully and Skinner that they were all set up to fail as a secondary benefit to the men being killed. This is kind of my favorite aspect of the episode, because I love the fact that Cancer Man and whoever the higher ups are at any given point, they always have this kind of scapegoat in Mulder that, like, whenever there's something they need to cover up that's got the involvement in a case that has something iffy about it, they can just send it Mulder because they know that, like, effectively Mulder's going to do their work for him, because nobody believes him and they all think he's a wacko anyway. So as soon as he starts shouting any crazy theories, it instantly kind of puts suspicion to rest. So it is an interesting element, I think. So we then go back to, and I think I've said this before, but I'm not that keen on episodes that do this, where they go back to the opening sequence and then essentially replay it all again, because it's like, oh man, you didn't.
Well, it's a TV episode and it's 42 minutes, so time should be precious, not to be repeated.
Yeah, like I think there's room for doing this, but I think the only time you should do this is when you see that scene for the second time, it means something completely different, or it highlights something that you didn't see when you first saw it because of everything that you've now seen. But there is nothing that's been given to us that makes us really look at this scene in a different light. Nothing too earth-shattering. So, we're just literally getting the same scene played again. And actually, what would have been a better opening is the invisible killer in the limo. Like, you get a general, he comes, he's in a limo, some dude just is in there, gets killed, the limo driver opens the door, there's no one there. That, to me, is far more intriguing than this scene being played. at the start.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, invisible killer. How did he get out of the car? Where did he go? Ooh, this is interesting. Why is he killing generals? But it just, yeah, clearly they had a 38-minute episode and needed to bump it up to a 42-minute episode.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. As soon as it came up and it said like 18 hours earlier, I was like, oh no, we're going to have to get to this whole sequence again and then watch it
Yeah.
again.
Again,
Just
yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Like, because that's the other thing. It's okay if you get to this sequence, like just as you start it, but then you go
mm,
off and rather than looking at what we've already seen, you're looking at like something
mm,
else that's going on as this is playing out. So it's like, all right, we know the
mhm,
timing, we know what's going on there. So now we're seeing this stuff. So I get that's another reason for doing a scene like that. But they don't. They literally just replay it. And you're like, oh man, that
mm.
starter was 3 minutes long. We're going to have to go through it all again. And they pretty much do. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Where are we? Yeah, so we have the opening sequence playing again, and Tiga is recognized by a Vietnam vet. He gives him a
Yeah,
list of names of all the POWs that were left behind. Then Mulder pulls his gun on Tiga, who vanishes. He goes straight for the general's car, but Mulder realizes that's where he'll go and gets there in time for the general to be saved by his armed guard. Which is that was a nice moment actually, because I liked that it wasn't
mhm,
Mulder or Scully who kind of took him down, but rather the armed guard.
yeah,
Because so many times these people in TV shows have like, the president's guard or, a
yeah,
general's like guard who these are like highly trained, proper special forces type people.
yeah.
So if anyone's going to get them, it should be them. So I like that it was his guard that got him.
But there's even that moment where after he's been shot, it becomes a little bit more playful with Tiger in the seat. It's in the shadows. It's dark, and it just holds for a little bit to give you an idea of what's going to happen here before the body slumps out. And I just wish
Yeah.
the episode had been more playful with that. Like even just showing us like static hallways or something, like the Invisible Man did. The movie where
Yeah.
you feel like something is there, like
Mm.
just almost haunting the hallways, but you just don't get that. There's none of that playfulness in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So Mulder visits Skinner at the Vietnam War Memorial. Obviously, we need to remember that Skinner fought in Vietnam, had an experience in Vietnam, something that
Yeah,
does keep coming back throughout the series. So Tiga is being named as Thomas something or other, a member of the right hand who was in and out of psychiatric hospital. Markham has
yeah,
backed them up, meaning they got to him too. And yeah, there's a nice little conversation between Mulder and Skinner, which again feeds into the fact that Skinner is a Vietnam vet. And we end on this line in which Mulder kind of says, "With all due respect, sir, he could be you." Um,
mm,
and it is this thing where it's like, Skinner, come on, man, don't let him cover this up. That
yeah,
could be you. That could have been you. And
mhm,
you know this hit Skinner hard. You can, he stood by that wall with all the names on it. Probably some of his own friends on there, some of his own men and stuff.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, so that's got to be a bit of a gut punch to him. But
mhm,
there you go.
yeah. Another cover up. Right, I said we're just going to wrap up on this one. So, Unrequited for me was, um, it was another one of those fine episodes. But as we said previously, fine for the X Files isn't good enough sometimes. There's nothing technically wrong with the episode. It's not bad.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
just, even as Monsters of the Week go, it's one of the most uninteresting ones. But I feel as if there's a great story in there, like something that probably will resonate with a lot of the characters, and just it's just not tackled in the right manner. So I enjoyed it. I don't think I would go back and watch it again. If I was rewatching the series, it might be one that I just skip over. For that, I'll be probably harsh and give it 2.5.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I do feel that is a bit harsh. It's not a perfect episode. I do think it is a 38-minute episode masquerading as a 42-minute episode. I think they could have used that extra time to, like you say, just give a bit more character to Tiga, a bit more playfulness. They could have added a few scenes there because I think they do go some way to make us identify with this guy and kind of feel sorry for him, because the dude spent 20 years in captivity, so you get where he's coming from. So I think throwing a few more scenes in there where we humanize him a bit more, which kind of would make it really kind of morally grey, because you're almost rooting for him to take these guys out. But because he's so cold and calculating, you don't you don't warm to him. You feel sorry for him, but you don't warm to him. They could have done both. But other than that, I do think there is some interesting stuff in it. I thought Markham was an interesting kind of sub-villain in there. I like a lot of the I like the stuff between Mulder and Skinner, and the callbacks to Skinner going in Vietnam, and I do think it has a solid ending. I'm going to go with a 3.5. It's not a very good episode, but I'd say it's somewhere between a good and a bad. Like you said, if there's did a few things to really tidy it up, then it could have been a very good episode. But it's somewhere in between for me. I will watch it again. As an X-Files fan, I do like to binge watch the series, and I will watch it if I'm going through. It's solid 3.5.
So tell us a little bit about episode 17, Tempest Fugit.
So this is the first part of a two-parter.
Oh, right, okay.
I would highly recommend going back and watching the season 1 episode, Fallen Angel, which is the episode with Max Fennig. Don't know if you remember Max Fennig. So this is the return of Max Fennig. So
I remember that episode quite well, actually.
Right, okay. So so this sees the return of Max Fennig in a 2-part story, which opens with a plane crash. So there's the whole story is geared around this plane crash. Was Max on it? Was he not on it? And what happened? It's like I say, it's a 2-part episode. They spent quite a bit of money on it, from what I remember. I remember when I was reading about it when it first came out. The crash site that you see is quite well done, and it's. I remember it being just the thing is it's one of those episodes that sits in that bizarre kind of, it's mythology but not essential mythology kind of episodes. Like there's things that happen in it that are key moments in the series, and yet if you remove the 2-parter altogether, it wouldn't have any effect on the series.
Right.
I think some people would argue with me on that because of one particular character and what happens to them, but I don't think it'd make any difference. If you didn't know that thing happened to that character, then you just assume, all right, we just don't see that character anymore, which we've had on the show before. We've had characters that have made a few appearances and then we don't see them again, and you just make that assumption. So beyond that, it's kind of like, it's weird. It's a mythology episode but it's not what I would call like I would. We've got a playlist of all the mythology episodes
Mhm.
on our channel. I don't think I would put it in there, to be honest, because I don't think
Right.
it's essential. If you're going to binge watch all the mythology stuff, so you get that continuing storyline throughout the series, I personally wouldn't put this in there because I don't think it's essential. But
Mm.
it is really good. From my memory, if they'd have released a movie at the cinema before Fight the Future, I would say this two-parter with a bigger budget would have been an excellent
Mm.
first X-Files movie.
Right. So join us next time when we will talk about Tempus Fugit, and we will have a discussion about whether or not this falls into being a mythology episode or not. Little added bonus for next time. Thanks for watching or listening, whether it's YouTube or your favourite podcast supplier. We appreciate it, and if you would review or like, that would be fantastic as well. And we will see you next week for another exciting X-Files Revisited.